Hello guys, welcome to the BlaBla bunker. It's been on an extended summer holiday. This is probably the most generous summer holiday that anybody in the world gets. I took this podcast on a break in, I think, June or July last year, and now summer is finally over. And I'm gonna start doing like a monthly episode now, and not a weekly like I did before. I'm a little bit busy with other stuff. I've managed to carve out a career in rock and roll without being able to play any rock and roll, so I need to put some effort into that. And I have a guest here, my first guest on this rebound. I think has an interesting story, or at least it's interesting to me, and I hope it's going to be interesting to you. Can you state your name and rank?
Name and rank? Are you taking me prisoner of war?
Yeah.
Alex Alderman. I guess I'm an American Expat first class.
Yeah. What does first class mean?
Better than third class, better than second class.
Okay. So the military kind of thing and prisoner of war thing is, I use that on purpose. I mean, you're a former military man, right?
I did 5 years in the U.S. Marines. Yeah.
And Marines, what is that? Like, what's the type of soldiers you can be in the U.S.?
Yeah, sure. So you can fly planes, I guess, as the Air Force. You can be on boats as a Navy. You can be in tanks on the ground as a soldier in the Army, or you can kind of do all three in the Marines. Yeah.
And did you fight? I mean, did you go to a battlefield or?
I went to a pretty scary place called Hawaii.
Yeah.
And I worked there for a few years, and no, I actually didn't go. I didn't deploy at all. I was very, very lucky.
Yeah. And what do you do? I mean, now you're not a military man. What do you do now? Like, what you live from?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a tech copywriter.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? I create web copies. I write the text for websites, and I also do social media content for Czech tech companies.
Mm-hmm.
So IT companies, software development companies, and SaaS and that kind of stuff.
About their products then, or solutions and or HR, like let's say, what do you call it, like when they're branding themselves to get employees or to sell their products, or?
Yeah, I mean, just really the brief way to say it is whenever they need text in English, wherever, it's I do that. I mostly focus on first of all the text that's on their websites. So if they're making a new website or they're starting, I guess, a new product or a new service they're selling, you have to tell people about it, and I'm the one that helps them tell it in the best way possible. So.
And is that something you learned in the military?
No. That's actually an interesting question. It's definitely not the application of the skills that I learned, but it's, I learned how to write good emails in the military. I was very much an office worker in the military, so I learned how to be a good office worker, which I guess is relevant to my life now.
Yeah. I guess like what people don't know about military is that behind, not everyone is out shooting a gun or driving a tank. It's a huge industry. Like it has offices and organizations and HR and payroll and whatever.
Yeah, it's huge.
And but how did you end up here? I mean, what
in Prague specifically? Yeah. So. One really good thing about the military is it's very scripted. Like, someone tells you what to do the entire time, so it tells you where to live.
Move the mic a little bit closer to you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you get told where to live, what your job will be, and pretty much your entire life is kind of dictated to you. And so when I got out of the military, I did the college thing, and then after that, I got started a career in basic retail sales. And I realized that I absolutely hated that. And if I did that for 40 years, I'd probably jump off a building. And so in kind of a way, in multiple areas of my life, it kind of crashed a bit. And to kind of reset things, I just decided to try a different country. I ended up in Prague.
And why Prague? What did you know about the country and city before?
Nothing. So before I came here, I dated a Czech girl like 4 months. One of those really intense and quickly ending relationships, and when when it ended like really badly. I decided, I was going to travel Europe, the very cliched mid-20s thing. And I had, I think, 3 months. Yeah, 3 months in Europe for like the free visa, and went to Spain first because I spoke a little bit of Spanish. Ended up in Bulgaria, and then for the last 2 weeks of my trip, I picked Prague because I dated this Czech girl, and if anything good happened in Prague, I can say oh, the relationship was awful, but because she was Czech, I went to Prague, and whatever good thing came from that, I can say, well, if I didn't have that relationship with that girl, then this good thing would have never happened, and so it kind of created
You're justifying your misery of staying with her.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. No, so I went to Prague only for 2 weeks. I met someone who they thought they needed a English teacher, pretty, I guess, well-to-do person, and they flew me back out for a 3-month short gig, like 6 months later. And during that 6-month gig is when I met my wife, and then I came and moved here to be with her, and it was not supposed to be like that. So we started dating. I mean, I told her I was interested in her maybe 6 weeks before I left, and she was very polite and said, "Oh no, I don't feel that way at all." And so I was like, "Okay, well, that's interesting." And so I kind of wrote it off, and we enjoyed hanging out, and we kind of hung out until that 6 weeks was up, and I was ready to go home. And like 3 days before I went home, she's like, "Yeah, I didn't mean to, but yeah, no, I guess I feel the same way too." And I tried to play it very cool. Of let's just play it cool. Let's I'm gonna go home and we'll talk. And if we feel this way in a year, maybe we can I don't know, think of something to do. And I made it like 2.5 months before I bought a one-way ticket back here. So,
wow, that's big. I mean, like you moved continents, and how is that for your friends and family back in the U.S.? Like when you tell them, "Yeah, I'm in Bulgaria," like. For us in Europe, the stereotype is that Americans don't even know where Mexico is. Well, they know that now because of the border, but you know what I mean? Like, when you tell your friends and family, I'm in Bulgaria, are they like scared, or are they excited, or are they...
Sure. So there's like no one I keep in contact with in the U.S.
No?
No. I never was really super close to my parents. And I guess, like I said, I was in Hawaii in the military. I left home at like 18. And we found that the best state of our relationship with me and my parents is to have just one ocean in between. Well, just a little wiggle
pond.
room. Yeah, just a little space between us. And I had friends before I left, and there wasn't a lot of those connections didn't last. Yeah. So, but if I talk about Bulgaria, obviously the average person I would talk to wouldn't know where that is on the map. I think by this point I could find it on a map.
Yeah, I'm not sure I could.
Although,
if it wasn't marked,
Yeah.
I know where to look, but I'm not sure I could pick it out.
Yeah. I do remember when I was flying to Prague from Bulgaria, there was I had to stop in Belgrade, and I was like, I don't know what country I'm in. I don't know. I'm in a city. I don't even know what country this is in. So American geographic education is not top tier. I'd say American education in general is not super top tier, and not sure if it's getting any better, but I guess that's a whole different podcast.
But yeah, but on that though, I mean, like you say that it's not good. Is it because the people are just not interested, or is it just because the school doesn't tell them? The greatest nation on earth, why should they be interested in someone else?
So I think there's that. I mean, America is huge, right? Not just economically, but it's physically a large place, right? So, if you live in the UK or Iceland or something, you don't have to. You can go to where someone speaks a completely different language without too big of a travel, right? I mean, especially if you're actually on continental Europe, right? So if you're in France, you can go a little bit to Germany or to Spain, and you can have this international experience, with a several-hour car ride, depending where you live in the country. So in the U.S., obviously, most people speak mostly the same language everywhere in the country, but there are different cultures. There's different sections of the country, and so you're really able to get this traveling experience. You'll be able to visit other places without technically leaving your country. It's just a really, really big place. So I think that's the most generous answer I can give of why Americans seem pretty content with not having much knowledge about other places in the world.
Mm. But so it's not like the stereotype that Americans are stupid is.
I
Is
mean,
that untrue?
stereotypes are there for a reason.
Mm.
There's a lot of. If you think about the average intelligence person, there's like half the people are even less intelligent than that. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
every place has got plenty of people who maybe have reserving their brain capacity to just kind of get through the day.
Mm.
Not a lot of extra to learn where Belgrade is. Yeah.
But so you said that your relationship with your parents works best when there's an ocean between.
Uh-huh.
That's I mean, you're not old. I mean, how old are you? Like
35, turning to 36 in a second. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, so your parents are probably in their like they're around 60 or something, right?
Yeah, mid-60s. Yep.
And you're the only kid, or
No, I had a younger brother, but he died a couple years ago.
And why is that? Why do you need an ocean between you and the parents?
I'm not sure if I need it. It's just that when we never really switched, because you have when you're a kid you have that parent-child relationship.
Yeah.
And then at some point, hypothetically, that you transition into just kind of being two adults, or like having your relationship mature into where you see them not just as a parental figure, but also just another human being. And we never really made that switch. Like I really don't know my parents very much. They don't really know me very much. And so we can have like very generic parent-kid conversations of, how's the weather over there, or like sending pictures of their grandkids and stuff. But like, as far as what I'm interested in or what they're interested in, we really don't know. And, I've tried to be the one who kind of tries to push that transition a little bit. And it doesn't seem like that's something that they're really interested in. And so it kind of made my peace of that. And yeah.
Where are you from? Like where in the States?
Sure. So born in Northern California in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
I was there for about 8 years, and then we moved to Atlanta, like suburbs of Atlanta. So I mostly grew up in the South in Atlanta, Georgia, but I was in California long enough not to pick up the accent. So yeah.
And what kind of family were you? Or like just
Sure. Yeah. So it was very interesting because we started quite poor, but my dad got a really, really good job when I started, I don't know, late middle school, early high school. So we got to kind of transition into like more of the middle class lifestyle, like, while I could remember it. So I got to kind of watch that transition. So that was really interesting. Because we moved, from the West Coast to the East Coast, we were very kind of isolated. I mean, we didn't have extended family around us. And so that was, I think, so that kind of shapes, that kind of affects you, because you don't have your aunts, you don't have those uncles, you don't have the grandparents. And so it's just kind of just that core family.
Mm.
Yeah.
And what did they do? I mean, like middle class
Sure.
income.
Yeah. So like I said, we lived in the suburbs. My dad was in sales, so he still is. He got up pretty high position in a furniture selling company. So I don't know exactly his title. He actually retires this year, actually. So it's a big year for him. But he was in retail sales, so he worked every weekend, and had 2 days off in the middle of the week sometime, and yeah. And then my mom she stayed at home, and that's about it.
And what kind of kid were you?
What kind of kid was I? I was always pretty smart. And I kind of went from, I guess when I was younger, like early middle school, I was pretty socially awkward. So I had no problem with like the tasks of school, like the assignments and stuff like that. I got pretty good grades, but I could not figure out the whole how to make friends thing, and how to, I don't know, get girls to like me kind of thing. I guess it's pretty normal, but those are the things that kind of stand out in my mind. In high school, I went just full blown weird. Started dyeing my hair different colors, and I still made pretty good grades in the first couple of years, and then almost failed out the last 2 years of high school. Started playing too many video games, and smoking pot every day, and not really good formula for success during those years. Yeah.
But when you say socially awkward, not good at making friends, I mean, like, do you think that you were limited some, or you know what I mean? Like what? Because we're all awkward somehow,
Sure. No, like I said, I imagine my experience isn't too atypical as far as being socially awkward. We all kind of have a combination of instincts and things we learned from home, and I'd say my the combination of those things was, for whatever reason, I ended up on the weird, socially awkward group of kids.
But were you bullied then, or?
A little. I was a little overweight when I was like in elementary school, so that doesn't help. And then I got in decent shape in late middle school, early high school, and then kind of throughout my life, I've gone from kind of heavy to fit to heavy to fit. So I've experienced both of those conditions, and yeah.
But you're tall.
I am tall.
And so, I mean, it would have been hard to bully you.
No. I was very, very afraid of confrontation. Like, it's not just about physical size. It's, you can tell by their eyes, or you can tell by their body language of whether or not that it'd be easy or difficult to bully people. And I don't know what vibes I was giving off, but it was giving off the "you should bully me" vibes. So
yeah.
And other people heard those loud and clear.
So when you started dyeing your hair and that stuff, was that like I don't know, like was it to try to belong to a certain group, or was it to stand out from the other group?
I don't know. I don't know how much rationale goes into decisions that 14 and 15-year-olds make, but I thought it was cool. And now I don't really have much hair left, but like I would really like to go back in that moment and be able to go with experimental hair colors again. That sounds pretty cool.
But and then what? You do good education wise. I mean, you obviously have skills for that, but you're struggling socially. And how was that then in the relationship with the parents and your brother, and in the home? How was that?
Yeah, so I was I would say, easy kid. My brother was 3 years younger than me. He did not do well in school. He was really had trouble with peer pressure. So he was athletic. He did sports, and he was really, I'd say, probably better socially than I was at being able to find out what people around him wanted from him. And he was pretty good at kind of living, going through those expectations, right? So he had a lot more trouble with like skipping class, or just sneaking out in the middle of the night or stuff like that. So he was he gave my parents a little bit of headaches. Yeah, growing up.
So they were not strict on you or any? There was no pressure from them on you?
Not at all. Like way too much in the opposite direction. So I could pretty much do whatever I wanted. So I was very much spoiled, right? So I didn't have any chores. I didn't have to, like, I never cooked in my life until I started dating, and I never ate vegetables in my life until I started. Like my early girlfriends, like, God bless them, they basically trained me in all the basic things you're supposed to know as an adult.
But you were potty trained, though. I mean, like,
I was potty trained.
Yeah.
I got that way. I got that far. Yeah.
But how? But this is interesting, because you're saying like that they didn't put pressure on. They didn't put any, let's say, duties or expectations to you in this sense. But on the other hand, you're struggling with that relationship somehow, the power dynamic of that relationship now in your adult age, or somehow. Do you know what I mean? It's
sure. No, I think it's pretty consistent. So basically, they had their life and their struggles or their worries, and they kind of focused on that, and they left me to kind of have my life and my worries and my struggles. And I kind of learned, like, it never even occurred to me that, I have kids now, and or second one on the way, but I have a kid.
You have 1.5.
1.5, yeah. And through dating and through, I'm married, so seeing how my wife interacts with her family, like I thought everything was quite normal, like, and it was really weird that these people like would talk to their parents multiple times a week, and so it wasn't like I felt as a kid that I had something abnormal, but looking back now that I have kids, it's like I do wonder, those that inner child where you're like, did they care about me at all, or were they interested in what was going on in my life or what I was thinking? I still have those still questions, and I still kind of struggle with that to this day. Yeah.
But I think also this is like moving away from your home country is such a valuable experience, because I felt that when I moved from Iceland to Denmark and I started making friends in Denmark, and I got invited to their, birthday parties and stuff like that, and I would see, like their families, everyone was welcome, everyone had like a normal conversation, and I thought, okay, well, back in my family, it takes 5 minutes and then we disagree about something or we fight or whatever, I don't know if it's a difference between, because Iceland is more American than it is European.
Mm-hmm.
We unfortunately suck up almost every bad thing we can do from American culture, and whereas I feel in Europe they are more they have healthier and more normal relationships somehow. Do you think what you were experiencing in your childhood or within your family was a standard American thing somehow, or you know what I mean?
Sure. Well, I mean, I've lived in Europe now for 7 years, so a little bit experienced with the different cultures. And I would say that just on general, Americans are much more independent, much more individualistic. So that's certainly part of it, and it may be a factor where, as Europe becomes more normal for me, these kind of differences in culture become more apparent, and like I forget that the culture I'm living in now is not my native culture, and that these differences may be just the reverse culture shock of living somewhere away from home for a long time. And part of the story is difficult because I'm pretty comfortable talking about difficult things in my life, but I don't know exactly how comfortable I am kind of putting my parents' business out there. But I will say, just to make the story a little bit more coherent, that my parents both individually struggled with challenges, some mental health stuff, some substance abuse stuff. So it's not something I talk about very often. And now that we're recording, part of my brain shifted to like, you should be really, really careful of what you say. So, but I do want to make the story coherent. I will say that there were definitely some pretty big challenges as a kid that, based on conversations that we've had before this podcast would maybe make a little bit more sense that I did have some pretty big struggles growing up, and that there are reasons that I live an ocean away that aren't just we never found out how to talk to each other. It was more than that, but yeah.
Like, but on I don't know. Like when you say that they had their challenges, those were more maybe affecting you in a way that they didn't have time for you.
Yeah.
Versus in some, like a lot of people have parents that have issues with either alcohol or substance or whatever, or mental health or whatever, but that kind of translate into direct abuse. Like either mental or physical or whatever. So that's not in your case. It's more that you were left to your own device, or.
I was never hit. Any abuse that I had was more on the mental side. And again, I wouldn't say that I was mentally abused as in like an action verb. That I would say that I have some trauma from just the environment that we were living in. So, they fought a lot. My parents fought a lot. And there was this weird dynamic to where, so my mom, I'm comfortable saying that my mom's dad was a full-blown heroin addict. So she grew, her whole life from before she was born until he died, when she was an adult. So she's got some pretty typical issues that came from that. And one of them was that she when she had kids, when she had me and my brother, she finally found a group of people that would always love her no matter what. And so that she very much protected that need of hers by never risking us not liking her or us not feeling that she was the best person in the world. So that translated into never having to do chores, never having to pick up after ourselves or cook meals for ourselves or help around the house, but at a cost, right? Because the cost was, I don't know. It affected my brother more than me. So she would. So I'm drawing a blank, not because I don't know what happened, because I don't know how to describe it in a podcast-friendly way. But she was just a very smother mother, I guess is the way to say it. So, and she was very. She never went to get diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure now with my very rudimentary knowledge of psychology that she's probably borderline or some cluster B.
What's that?
Sure. So she had difficult kind of regulating her emotions, and she might go from very much like she would go from, you kids are the best and you're everything to me and you mean so much to me, to I don't know why you hate me and I do everything nice for you and you treat me so badly, and just
kind of like in a way a bipolar
in that ballpark, yeah. But basically she would she's very, very, very emotionally manipulative to the point I would not guess that she knows that about herself. Right? Because I have some of this too, where I notice it more now as an adult, but even to my wife in business, I can see, and it's to my great advantage, honestly, in business. But like, I have this toolkit. I have this toolkit of seeing my actions, predicting how people will respond, both emotionally and just through their actions, and kind of working backwards. So like, I don't like what they did, or I don't like how they made me feel. So I want them to know that. And so if I wanted them to feel bad or guilty, then this action would help me. And it's not.
This is called being manipulated.
Yeah, but it's not. It doesn't happen like that. It's completely subconscious.
Yeah. But that's maybe because that's the only way she has been.
Sure.
And that she comes from an environment that's the
Absolutely.
only way that was to be. So and I think that, because it's often, and I think everyone, or a lot of people, everyone has parents, first of all. We don't happen in a vacuum. And our parents bring something into our families that is shaped by their past and their parenting and so on. And I think it's I think sometimes we have not unfair ideas about how parents should be, that they should be some sort of a perfection. I remember where parents should not be having sex, and if they do, we shouldn't hear them.
Sure.
And they should not do this. They shouldn't get drunk. They shouldn't do now you're a parent,
Yeah.
and you're still the flawed person that you were before you became a parent. You still have all the things that make you. And you can't silence them, and I think it's such an interesting thing that, and I don't think it's not about what opinion you have but I think us as a society, we are somehow expecting parents. It's like with politicians, they should never drink and drive.
Yeah.
But there's just a certain percentage of the population that drinks and drive, and that doesn't ask about name and rank. It just happens to whomever.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting with parents. The question is more also then for us, what do we do with it? How do we?
Right.
And it sounds like you are aware of this trait that you have, and you try to rather use it in a positive way to your advantage instead of in a negative way.
It wasn't as conscious as that. I would say that most of my awareness has come in the last several years, and at that point, most of the habits and most of the the ways that I interact with the world and with other people were pretty established. It's more that you can kind of see a little bit of it. I think when so I've been married now for 5 years, and the first early couple years of the relationship were really difficult, and we definitely almost divorced. We were like in a constant state of almost divorcing for several years, and through working through that, going through individual counseling and our version of marriage counseling, we kind of identified some of these things, and and so kind of having a really clear environment where I can see how my actions were affecting someone else, and kind of how some of my actions were being perceived. I can kind of see what was, a lot of it was subconscious of how I was acting maybe different than normal people acted, right? So I kind of figured that out.
But that's why you're here.
30s. Sure, yeah.
I knew that about you.
Yeah.
Like, you're not carved from the same stone like everybody else, But on the other hand, I mean, like what you're saying is that, okay, so you have this issue with your wife, like, and you need to get help. It's very tempting not to get help, and it's very tempting to say, I'm right, you're wrong. And not seeing things for what they are, and see how your behavior affects or traits affect another person,
Yeah, it was so easy to do that I did it all the time. So I have BPD. I have a borderline personality disorder, and that is really, really difficult for other people to deal with. And it was a kind of a race against time. So I was married when I was 20. It was like,
what, you were married before?
Yeah, we're on take 2. Yeah, I was married from 20 to 23. And that was, oh my God, I feel so bad for this person. We're not in contact anymore, but if we were, like, I would have very, very heartfelt apologies to make. I was absolutely a terrible husband, and I wish, I hope that any trauma from that relationship she's been able to work through. But no, I mean,
how terrible?
Like pretty bad.
Violent?
No, sorry. Yeah, no, not violent. Basically, just this expectation, because again, I come from a family where I wasn't expected to do anything, and I was in the military, so I was the one making the money, and I was also 20, to be fair. But like, basically, I'm doing my part by going to work. Everything else is up to you. Just very much like in that very stereotypical, misogynistic type approach to a relationship. Also, I was BPD and didn't know it, so just very much just difficult in pretty much every sense of the word. But again, like I wasn't aware of it at all, and like I've never seen a functional relationship, like romantic relationship in my life, and so basically I kind of winged it.
You had no template.
No template, or I had a template, unfortunately, and I used that template, and it turns out that it's not a great template. Yeah.
But how does this borderline personality disorder? I mean, how does that come out? Like what? Okay, so what is it? I mean, like, or how does it break out for you?
Sure. The easiest way to explain it is, there are times where we have a disagreement, and I know I'm right. Not like I think I'm right, but like I'm 100% sure that you did something against me, and I'm not overreacting. I'm not being emotional. It's clear
fact,
100%. 1 + 1 = 2, and if you don't see that, then like I don't know what to tell you, because 1 + 1 always equals 2, and clearly what you did was wrong. Clearly, if any objective person looked at the situation, they would say I was right. And if they don't say that I was right, then they're clearly not an objective person. Yeah. I don't. Okay, and basically to see kind of every confrontation that way, or every disagreement that way. Anything that you don't like about my behavior is you're being extremely unfair. You're persecuting me. It just is just not a good starting point to have an equitable relationship with someone. And it's, anyone listening that has knowledge of BPD will say that as not a good definition, and it's more complicated than that, and it is.
But is there a big difference between what you just described now and let's say narcissistic behavior, for example? I mean,
they're both cluster B, so they're both they're both cousins. Yeah.
Because you described a lot of people that I know now.
Sure.
And
yeah, I don't think I don't think cluster B personality disorders are contagious, but if we found out that they were, it would not be a big shock to me. And I guess because a lot of it is not just hereditary, but also based on your childhood environment, in a way that it is contagious.
I mean, and if you look at it now, I mean, I think with the way that society is developing now, especially, I mean, now when we say society, we're talking about the Western world.
Sure.
We're not talking about the people that are actually working and are going to take over after some time.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about us, the spoiled Westerners. We are, in my mind, like, we are actually building a society that is making everyone who is, let's say, infectable in a way, we're going to turn them into narcissists, because we're giving people now, I mean, people that are growing up with social media their whole life, they walk around with the idea that their idea is the right one and the only right one. And then we put them into that echo chamber where they follow only people that agree with them, and they block out people that disagree with them. So you're actually kind of reinforcing constantly this idea that this is the reality of the world. Like, people, I don't know, like abortion should be banned, or Putin is bad, or Trump is evil, or whatever, whatever. And there is just no way, like, if you take Trump, for example, if the guy would cure cancer now, we would not give him credit for that, even if that would be the greatest thing that anybody did. We just, there is a certain group of people that is so fanatic about their idea of that their ideas are better than ours or others, and so I think I see a rise in this, what you're describing in terms of personality disorder and narcissism, that it's, and we're feeding it. Mm-hmm. And it's scary. I'm afraid of this, because it's almost like people are splitting in half, and they, after some time, they just won't be able to coexist,
Mm-hmm. Well, sure. So, deep down this rabbit hole you want to go, but it's almost,
we have time.
Yeah, we've got time. Let's say how do I say it? So it's on purpose. Like it's psychological warfare, and before people, I know you can't. I know it's not a video podcast, but if people could see, I'm not actually wearing a tinfoil hat right now, but So you think about the state of politics in the U.S., and so it's a kind of a first past the post situation where, you've got basically a red team and a blue team, and they're desperate to get 51% of the people to agree with them, right? Mm. And so, at one point there was, let's say some good ideas, and if 51% of people say I agree that this is a good idea, then obviously it's a superior idea, and then we'll do that, right? And the concept of democracy, and that the kind of good ideas will fight in the marketplace of ideas, and they'll win, and this is an effective system for finding effective solutions to problems, right?
That suit the majority.
Sure. Well, that's not the world we live in anymore. So we live in a world now where it's just full-blown psychological warfare to get as many people possible to vote for either the red team or the blue team, and that to accomplish that, there's no limit to like what kind of mimetic warfare that they'll kind of do to people, right? So it doesn't really, we're past the point of like policy ideas where here's a problem, here's the best way to fix it, because we tried that and people don't care, and people aren't interested enough in policies that they'll go and vote and have favorite candidates because they have the best ideas. So in a way, it's kind of a reinforcing thing where the politicians get the people they deserve, and then the people get the politicians they deserve, and then it's just a complete broken mess. And that's just kind of where we are now, and that this kind of fallout of two groups kind of fighting for power have pretty much psychologically broken probably over 50% of the population. It's not great, I would say. So.
Because now you have the luxury of looking at this from the outside, let's say. I mean,
Yeah.
like, and for me, like the U.S. is just kind of collapsing into some sort of a
Sure.
shit show, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, a lot it looks from the, let's say, the guest's eye, that a lot of the dialogue is not about, as you said, something that actually benefits the majority of people, or is about making everyone's life a little bit better. But it's very much, the dialogue is very much on fringe matters that, and it makes you often wonder, like, is it on purpose? Is it kept like that? Because that, sometimes I think, okay, when I look at this, I think, do these people that control the narrative, and, you know, like, we have to face it, that mainstream media, or like our legacy media, let's call it like that, the legacy media is very much dependent on government and dependent on big business, because they lost the subscribers that, you know, when the internet came, then, you know, people like my parents and me, we stopped paying for a newspaper subscription or a cable TV subscription or whatever, because the information became free. So they had to kind of alter the business model and harvest us as readers to a much larger extent than they did before. And so it's so obvious that there is a much better relationship between politics and media than ever was. You know, like, media used to kind of be keeping the politicians in check, but now they're kind of just spreading their gospel. But the stuff they're talking about is always, and I think if it's like, they talk about gender, for example, and gender identity and stuff like that. And I think, okay, are they putting that out because 99% of people are concerned about this? The answer to that is obviously no, because a lot of people just don't care about this. It doesn't mean that they hate people that care about it, but it's just not something that matters to them. They want to have a job, they want to put food on the table, the kids to school. They're not thinking about whether someone has a pussy or a dick, and they don't give a shit. And then they take like some really, like, racism, for example, that's kept very much there, and everything is turned into racism and white supremacist and stuff like that. And I think these topics are very relatable. Everybody understands them. We can all say, okay, white versus black, dick versus pussy. It's super, super easy, and everyone can engage in that conversation. But we cannot all engage in how complex is the atmosphere and what effect CO2 has on it, and why is the war in Ukraine like it is? Did we maybe do something to cause it? Are we stimulating it by putting money in there? You know, the big things, the wealth transfer during COVID that people are talking about, that, you know, like, yeah, this was the biggest wealth transfer in the world. These are economically very complex matters that most people, especially in the US, they just don't even have time to think about it or educate themselves. But everybody can go to the cantina and fight about dick and pussy, you know. Do you get my...
I get what you're saying. So I think there's a lot of things going on here. I think there is an economics part of it. I think there's a class part of it. And so I guess we can do economics first. So if you think about the late 20th century, after the Second World War, you know, the U.S. kind of just took off. It was really, really boom times for the U.S. And so, there was enough growth that, you know, the pie was getting bigger for everyone. And so, you know, even if you were, you know, at the top of the financial hierarchy and you were making tons of money, everyone else could make money too, because there was enough money to go around, right? And so when things kind of the economy started to crash, now, you know, the pie is no longer getting bigger. And so instead of people focusing on just improving their slice through just the entire pie getting bigger, you know, the people at the top of the financial hierarchy now, they're not going to stop making money just because the economy is bad. But now instead of just making money because there's growth and because there's economic expansion, now it's forced to turn to taking other people's slice of the pie, right? So people who are successful are going to make money no matter what environment they're in. So it's just a matter of whether everyone makes money or if the successful people are basically having
taking part of our stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think that's and then when that happens, right? How do you stop people from
fighting back,
storming the Capitol, right? Well, there's a couple of approaches to that, and obviously, them fighting against each other is pretty beneficial to that situation. And then so say there's disadvantaged groups, right? So you're in the advantaged group. So you could try to make things more equitable. You can try to say let's fix the disadvantages, or you can just basically have this. Let's just admit that it's bad for them, and let's just pity them, and let's just make them a pseudo protected class, and you don't improve their situation at all, but you just kind of reify them that this is the very special group, and if you were a minority, or if you were whether that's sexual minority, racial minority, everything like that, would you want better economic future? Or would you want to be talked about in the New York Times, in every single post, right? So if you ask them, it's probably like, hey, can we actually just have good economic opportunities? It's like, no, but we will make sure that everyone feels guilty that you don't have them. Is that good enough?
But that's also for the ones who portrays them like that. Like, it's such an easy thing to be a good person today. I don't even need to do anything nice. I can just put a Ukrainian flag in my LinkedIn profile, and then I'm good.
Sure.
It's virtue is so cheap today, and I think you can go on publicly somewhere and just talk about a certain topic, and that kind of wipes away all your sins. You might be a rapist, but you're good because you're supporting the right thing.
I think this goes back to what we're talking about with politics, where to stay legitimately in power in the public's eyes, you've got to win these 51% elections, right? And so to do that, you need to have groups of people in your coalition, right? And so, and the way it usually works is that we will put these disadvantaged groups on some kind of pedestal, so that they will vote for us because, the other group is not, sanctifying other groups of people, right? And we are. So obviously you should vote for us. And so you have these kind of half pity, half bribery of just saying, okay, if you want to be on the winning team, no problem, but you have to be loyal. You have to vote for us, and you have to be obedient, right? And obedience is a big part of this. So, and the way you can test this is, right, so say that there's some protected minority. Again, when I say minority, I don't just mean racial. It could be lots of different things. Okay. So say that the flavor of the week is we love tall people. Okay, tall people
with borderline personality disorders.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's make that group.
They are a special class of people. And if you say anything bad about how tall they are, or about how emotionally unstable they are, then you are a bad person. Okay. And if a tall, emotionally unstable person says, they actually have a pretty good point about the unstable thing. Okay. So now we have an impasse, because the group says that these people need to be listened to. These people need to be respected for their wisdom and their unique perspective. But as soon as that individual disagrees with the people in power, then obviously, they've been infiltrated by the short wing fringe media, or they've been they're having short person conspiracy theories, or so it's you can tell when the protected class ever disagrees with the sponsors, how the sponsors actually feel. And it's not about this. it's about power, and it's always about power, and it's about obedience to power. And so, in I'd say a perspective that you don't hear very often is maybe that's okay. Like, we are more aware of how much the government kind of shapes society and tries to control. You can say control the narrative. You can say kind of, but I mean, is that really?
It's nothing new.
It's nothing new, first of all,
no.
and
It's just visible now.
It's visible now, and it's being, it's never fights. Big political revolutions are usually very, very rarely the elites versus the underclass, right? Because it's never a contest. That's never a threat to the elite. It's always the top 5% want to be in the top 1%, and so we're going to use the bottom 95% as a weapon against you, right? So it's never like, oh, the general population is now much more aware on their own, and they found out the excesses of government. It's other people who aren't as
they're higher up in the pyramid.
Yeah, they don't have as much power as they'd like, but still very much elite. Are going to tell all the secrets and all the shady things that the top 1% are doing, so that the bottom 95% throw them out, so that they can put the other elites in, and then they'll just do the same thing that the other group
over
did.
time. Yeah, I agree, and it's actually an interesting thing because I'm almost 50, so I've kind of lived through a time where there was, obviously a big society change and technology change and all that, but I also seen a huge political change, and I remember like 20 years ago or something like that, I read an article in the newspaper where it was saying like Social Democrat, they have, let's say, their purposes has been exhausted. There is no need for them anymore. We have secured the rights of the working class. They're not being exploited in terms of hours. And now I'm talking Europe. There is minimum wage everywhere. Minimum holiday and all these kind of basic things that were not there when the kind of industrial revolution and everything started. They have been kind of secured. We have what's it called? Parental leave payments. We have like sick leave. It's a lot of stuff that we get. Of course, we work for it and we pay into this mutual fund that finances this. But on the other hand, and then this article was saying, and it's probably written by someone who would be called a right-wing extremist right now, but I don't remember who wrote it, but that person said that they've kind of done with the list. What's the risk is that they will now start with stuff that isn't really going to benefit the majority, because all these things were good for society as a whole, and they obviously needed to continue to be voted, because they cannot just say, yeah, we're going to give you one extra day of holiday, because with that, then there would be 365 days of holiday in the end. So they had to find new topics to kind of drive on. And what I feel has happened over time now is that what you would call like a traditional left, middle left, they have abandoned those basics. And they have done it some time ago, and they've gone on to some other topics that are actually, many of them, very detrimental to the people that needed them, so let's say the working class. So if you take, for example, energy prices now, like in the name of global warming, it is kind of okay that energy is more expensive, but that's going to harm. And the people who are saying that it's okay, the people who are closing down the nuclear power plants in Germany, they are left-wing politicians that are actually making decisions and policies that harm most the ones that got them in there, or were supposed to be their supporters. And it's like the left has abandoned the left somehow, and that has created like a space where you now see actually people that are kind of very much on the right side, like when I mean like, free enterprise and build your own life from your own effort and work for you, be responsible and blah, blah. They are actually appealing to this group of people that are the lowest paid and so on, because the others have just kind of left the ship and they're just kind of floating somewhere in the sea and they're waiting for someone to come and help them, And it's such a fascinating thing how, and I think, kind of speaking to your description of the pyramid in the way that, you have And that's what I feel we are. We have created like an educated elite on top that is kind of in some holy matrimony with business and big business, and then below that you have some people that would like to get to that position, but to get there they need the public to they need to weaponize the public against them, and they're doing that now because they're. I think if this goes on now, like the situation we have now, that we have these catastrophic governments everywhere that are just taking decisions that harm the ones that are least able to pay. Like, it's fine for me if the energy goes up 20, 30, 40, 50%. I don't care. But I know that there are people here, and there are more of them than me. Mm-hmm. So they we're going to have a huge right wing, I think, like wave throughout if we're in this situation for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 more years, mm-hmm. high inflation, high energy prices, all that. Someone's going to come in and say, listen, I'm going to change this, I'm going to do that, and we're going to vote that person,
Sure, and I think it's one of those situations where, I don't know if you've I heard this in like Psychology 101 class, basically, where if you had a group of monkeys and I think it was like they hung a banana from the top of the cage and they put like electrical wiring to it. They would get shocked if they touched the banana, right? Mm. Or climb a ladder. I don't remember. It's been a long time. But anyway, the threat was very real in the first generation of monkeys. And so what they did was they taught their kids, don't ever go up there. It's dangerous, right? And then, after a few years or after a few generations, whatever, they turned the electricity off. It's no longer dangerous. But that story is passed down for generations to where we just know that is a dangerous thing, whether or not, no one's gone and confirmed it in a long time. But so when we're born, we see that there's a government, there's people in charge of us, and that's just the way it is, and that's the way it's always been, and that's just the normal way things are. And that, we have a government that we're told is to take care of us, if we're sick, if we're hurt, if we can't work, we've got this safety net, we've got this almost parental figure of people who's going to tell us what's right, what's wrong, and that's just become very normal for us. But it's just, there's no obligation for some people to take care of other people, right? There's no and really the government it's just like, if a group of people have most of the resources and the money, it's in their best interest for everyone else to be satiated, to be generally okay enough to where they're not, burning down the castle.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's this border of behavior is kind of dictated by the government's fear of its people. Right. And over generations, I mean, especially in the last 50 years, maybe 100 years, the government has much, much less to worry about. You don't have, I mean, everyone's just happy to sit at home and get fat and watch Netflix. What do they have to be afraid of, right? And so I think you'll notice, and I think you are noticing, that their actual obligations to provide good government services or to provide a logical, solution to problems is zero. I mean, they have all the resources, they have the money, they have the prestige, they've got everything. Their only concern is that we don't go and burn down the castle. But have you looked at people lately?
They're not going to burn anything down.
Yeah, right. And so there's no pressure that's saying that you actually have to do a good job as a politician. It's just I don't know. I think we're watching that whole system kind of collapse in real time. And I'm less worried about in the Czech Republic. Like you said, energy costs go up. There's going to be, I think, at least in Europe, or at least maybe more Central Eastern Europe, that people aren't going to stand for that shit. People are going to burn shit down.
Because here you have people that actually suffer. I mean, like, I'm from Iceland. It's the most spoiled nation in the world, and like, people are there traveling like never before, even though everything is more. Like, it doesn't dent anything. Like, they're just having a great time. And like, it's super. But here, I know people here who are telling me that the butter has gone up 10%. Now I have to buy margarine, and what effect? Okay, margarine is poison, butter is healthy, margarine is poison. So now you made these people switch to inferior nutrition because of stupid COVID decisions of printing money that is now we're paying through inflation. These people, they won't take it forever. It's clear, and they will vote. If they can't vote, then they will do something else. Because there are actually people who can't afford food, or they can't afford shelter.
In a vacuum, I would say that I'm much less worried about the Czech Republic than America. But the caveat to that is that if America goes down,
a lot of
Europe
stuff
is
goes
fucked,
down.
yeah. But no.
But I was thinking about that actually, talking because, and I kind of want to tie that a little bit to your military background. I mean, and Alex, I wouldn't even call this a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
These are the conversations and the logic that I think a lot more people should be thinking instead of just being spoon-fed some bullshit. But that's a whole different topic. Because this is not a rabbit hole. You don't need a tin hat to understand that people with power and money want to have more power and money, and they will just do the bare minimum to stay there.
Sure.
Anyway, I would do that. If I was there, I would do exactly the same.
Sure.
But talking about the U.S. going down, and now, because you spent 5 years in the military, and I was actually thinking about it in the morning when I was walking the dog, that I feel like it's kind of the last song before the discos open or turns on the closes, and turns on the light for the U.S. in some way to exercise their military power, because I kind of feel like there is some sort of a meltdown culturally, and I don't think that in 50 years or 100 years from now that the U.S. will be able to even man their military, because either health issues or the condition of the people or mental issues, or they will all be trans people and they don't want to go and fight. Because I think now the ideology is very much built on that we can all be friends, but we can't. There are going to be wars, and if we are not ready to fight them, then we're going to be taken over by somebody else. And there's billions of people around the world that want the life that we have, and they're willing to come and take it. So in some way we have to defend that if we wanna protect some sort of a status quo. And I was thinking about, is it kind of now for the US in the next 10 years to go and fight some war that creates a new stability or new balance for whatever, against China or Russia or whoever is the aggressor, or
we'll be the aggressor. But yeah.
And or whoever they will make the aggressor, and or are they? Do you know what I mean? And you've been in the military, you know how it is. I mean, it's not like an easy thing, right? It's discipline. It's everything that we're saying is toxic masculinity. It's all the stuff that we're saying is wrong. That's what you need to be in the military, right?
Yeah, sure. And I don't actually know if my military experience is the relevant. I think I've learned a lot more that's relevant to this conversation outside of the military than in. I mean, I was an office worker,
but someone has to do that. Without the office, there is no war.
No arguments with that. But So first thing I'll say is that So I do believe that the West is in decline, to say it lightly. I do believe that our culture is breaking down and that it's going to take a lot of other stuff down with it. But I also think that even at operating at 10% capacity, there's not an easy, no one's going to easily come and take over America, right? Because we're good at creating problems, but we're also pretty good at solving problems. And we are pretty reliant on technology solving a lot of our problems. And no, we're not going to have as many people joining the military. And it's not a 50-year problem, it's a now problem. The recruitment numbers are abysmal for recruiting in the military. But we can blow shit up with drones now. We're going to see a lot more of this automated warfare, I have no doubt. So I wouldn't count on just the fact that everyone in America is fat and doesn't want to fight as the thing that's going to bring down America. And I also don't think that it's going to be like a decline is a slow process, right? It's so slow that you probably, if you're not paying attention to it, you don't even realize it's happening.
It's like boiling a frog.
Yeah, boiling a frog for a really, really long time. And but there's a lot changing right now that doesn't point to, okay, America might be collapsing, but it's collapsing maybe slower than everyone else. So the relative position of America might not be due to a radical realignment like a lot of people.
At least you still have productivity there. I mean, like it's still a productive economy in a way that, people are creating value, and like there is a lot of value creation that happens in the U.S. The question is just then, how is it spent?
Sure. So there's that. There's the economic part, but there's also the military part. Like one of my favorite jokes I heard during when the Ukraine war was the topic of the day was something like the U.S. is about to show Russia why they can't afford healthcare. We put a lot of money into defense, and so even if Rome is burning, the military is still pretty formidable. And we're going to see a lot of shifts in the economy already happening, but especially over the next decade, to where I would say the era of kind of globalization is ending. To where after World War II, and we kind of decided that the best way to stay friends with our neighbors was to do business with them, because if you think about one of the core parts of colonialism was if you had Britain and you had France and they went to war all the time, you wouldn't want to have complex economies, interconnected economies, because every time you go to war, they have this power over you. Well, we'll cut off the wheat, or we'll cut off whatever. And so that's kind of one of the inspirations for colonialism, where, okay, well, I can't trade with France, but I can go, conquer this little island and mine their resources. And the relationship is not like neighbors, but it's definitely like a kind of, state and colony kind of relationship where it's pretty one-sided. And so, they're never going to go to war with us, because it would be suicide. And so you kind of had these kind of everyone, the great powers would have their little territories and their colonies, and
to secure the resources
without having to play nice with the other great powers, right?
So you can still hate the French.
You can still go to war with them, and basically you would still have access to whatever materials you would need, right? And so, kind of moving away from that system, we'd say, okay, well, let's actually have a more global economy. Let's have more interconnected economies, and we saw a lot of advantages of that system. There's plenty of disadvantages, but the global GDP skyrocketed, right? And so we kind of, since during the Cold War and since World War II and during the Cold War, the U.S. kind of helped build this new kind of globalized system to where you can kind of trade with anyone, and the U.S. Navy would basically stop the pirates or stop military aggression, because it was a pretty big deal back then. If you were sailing resources from one country to another, like, it was very interceptable, right? And you had to have military protection for that. And so kind of as the U.S. became the predominant military force after World War II, we kind of, in a way, bribed the world to be on our side against the Soviets, and said, okay, well, anyone in the world can trade with anyone, and with the backing of the U.S. Navy, and that, you don't have to worry about people sinking your ships, so you can kind of set up these complex trade routes, and the birth of this kind of globalized, interconnected system was developed. And that's kind of all ending, right? And I think it's pretty much being turned off on purpose, but because certain countries, like China being the top one, was really, really advantaged by that system. Like, if you look at a map and you look at China, and you see that they are just surrounded from the coast and their waterways, they're just surrounded by countries that hate them. And so getting out of this first island chain is actually really, really difficult in a time of military aggression, right? So China was really able to benefit from a more globalized system of trade, and obviously their GDP shot up. And I would say that the U.S. is now saying that, oh, well, if they're going to start competing with us and stuff, then let's go back to the system where you actually have to back up your economic prosperity with military might,
Mm.
right? And so I think we're going to see a lot of, I mean, we're already seeing it where a lot of the labor and stuff in China, the manufacturing stuff in China, there's a big push in the U.S. to bring it back,
Mm.
right? Because for the last 50 years, we've depended on third worlds to
Do stuff
do
cheap.
stuff for us, and we decided we wanted to be patriotic and we wanted to build our own third world at home.
Yeah.
So,
But that's but I've thought a lot about this. Like, so let's say now that China and India had a military alliance,
hmm
and then they would invite Mexico to join,
hmm
and part of the deal would be that China and India would put weapons into Mexico.
hmm
What do you think the U.S. would do?
if
They have this Monroe Doctrine, I think it's called, where
Uh-huh.
they say that anyone who enters in a sphere of influence of the
Right.
U.S., that shall be deemed an aggression. Do you think that in the same way as if Russia felt threatened by NATO coming into Ukraine and into the Baltics, do you think the U.S. would respond in a similar way?
Oh, absolutely. And I think
Mm.
so I mean, I think that's why kind of we had so many kind of covert and not so covert activities in South America is for that to be possible, Mexico has to be willing to be that kind of partner. So basically that they would feel that they would not be a teammate of the U.S., but would rather be a teammate of China and India.
Mm.
And so and a lot of that, one of the only reasons that it would happen that way is if we had such big ideological differences to where they would they'd be more susceptible to wanting to put Indian missiles in Mexico. And so
I mean, it's a very hypothetical case,
No,
and
no, no,
unlikely. But I'm just thinking, because for me, it's a very much of a simplification. It's never right to attack a country. I mean, it's never right to kill people, whoever they are. But it's a very simplified version just to look at an isolated event versus looking at it as it's a reaction or as a one point on a timeline of something, because history is not what happens like only in the books. It's what's happening today. You know what I mean? And so I often thought about this with the U.S. because, I mean, the U.S. has only nations that are on their side around them, and they have secured that with influence and infiltrating and stuff like that. Like you say with South America, I mean, like the Cuba missile crisis in 62 or 3 or whatever. That was an example of what the U.S. would do, and they were putting the missiles to Cuba. It's not like they were putting them, I don't know, to Mexico, to the border with California.
Well, I mean, it's about as close.
Yeah, actually, geographically, distance-wise, it is. But how is that when you were in the military? So, is there an ideology there that is preached? Are you told this is the enemy?
Not particularly,
really.
No. I mean, so I was in. So I graduated high school in 2005, and I joined that year. So I was in from 2005 to 2010. So it was still very much like post 9/11. So, and I guess in that way, we, not just in the military, but just as a culture in the U.S., we very much had in our minds that the Muslim world was an enemy and stuff like that. So I guess to that point, sure. But I see as much indoctrination in the corporate world as I do in the military. I don't think it's anything different. But the military is a pretty special case because it's really, they prepared you to kill people, and not just like how to aim the gun properly, but like how to like get to a point. I mean, because it takes a lot to get a human comfortable killing another human, right? If you're starving, like I mean, there's this evolutionary instincts to where you will kill to protect yourself or to not die. But in the very comfortable world that we live in now, to be able to kill someone psychologically, like, there's a lot of things that they have to fuck with, and if you there's a lot of psychological changes that are purposefully made when you go through like basic training. So I think that part's pretty interesting. But as far as like the whole pushing some kind of cultural narrative as this is the enemy, this is not, I don't think it's done at the military level. I think it's done in like the
society in general.
The media level. Yeah. Yeah.
But how, like, but thinking about it, Alex, now you're like a troubled kid in some way. I mean,
Sure.
like,
No, definitely.
and
Yeah.
you never had to be responsible for anything. You were trying to fit out or fit in or whatever it is that you were trying to color your hair and all that stuff. And then you go to the military. Why the fuck did you go to the military?
Sure. I don't, during this whole time, I've always had pretty good survival instincts. And I had survival instincts going, you need to do something different or you're fucked. Because like I said, I missed, I think, like 40 days in my last year of high school. I was smoking pot every day. Like, I was smart enough to know that this is not going anywhere good. And it wasn't like I planned and researched to go in the military. I got a call one day, like in March of my graduating year. So I'd finished high school. It was 2 months before I graduated high school, which somehow I wasn't supposed to be able to graduate, but they let me anyway. But anyway,
they just wanted to get rid of you.
I wasn't a difficult kid. I just didn't do any of the assignments and go to the class. But so they got a call. Hey, we're the Marine Corps. We'll do this, and that. Do you want to join? And like, I went and signed up a couple of days later. A big part of it, like I said, we weren't poor when I was in high school, but I still grew up in that environment. So like, I never expected my parents to pay for college. And so the biggest thing for me was that if I went to the military, they would pay for my college afterwards. And because I scored really high on all the tests, I got to do some pretty cool stuff. I got to be a linguist. I got to learn a foreign language and stuff like that. So basically it was a very impulsive thing. My dad was also in the military only for 2 years, but he spoke highly of that. And, being a kid who felt kind of ignored by his parents, I wanted to
score points.
Yeah. And I did. It was very point scoring activity, I would say.
But you suffered there.
Sure. Yeah.
What was the suffering about?
If you in the military, and I don't know, all the branches are different. I don't know if all the branches are the same. I mean, but in the Marine Corps, it's a very like alpha male environment, and it's just that is not me at all. And I was a pretty scared, socially awkward kid, and I was 18. I was very young, and it was just it was a big time to grow up. Right, it was a lot of growing up to do, and that's kind of what I think So I think really highly about that experience it was honestly a little bit traumatic. I had some kind of underlying anxiety issues, and kind of going through the military made those worse, like noticeably worse. But a really, really important thing that clicked for me was that I'm able to do hard things. And we live in a world now where it's very much preached that no one should have to do anything hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Because there's someone in China doing it for us.
Not so much that, right? So, because to have high expectations, it's not for free, right? So, if I have high expectations for my kids, that means that it opens up a possibility for them to, in their eyes at least, let me down, right? So, if I say, if you have some big challenge that you want to do, you want to start a business or something, and you're unsure if you can do it, one approach is to say, well, you don't have to start a business. Like, you're good the way you are. Like, just because you're freeing that person from high expectations. You're freeing that person from potentially failing, right? And so when we say things like, maybe I'll say weight loss because I'm overweight, and so it's something that I deal with, and so I'm pretty comfortable talking about it. But you can say I'm overweight, and someone can say, yeah, you are. And there's nothing, you're not a bad person or anything, but you are overweight. You would be healthier if you lost weight. You would be healthier if you worked out. These are all objectively, scientifically true. And what you're telling me is that my life would be better if I made changes. That's not a revolutionary thing to say. At least it's not supposed to be, but it kind of is now, right? Because now it's no. You're fine the way you are, right? Don't try to improve yourself. It's okay. Improving yourself is hard. And you don't have to do things that are hard, right? So instead of you going and struggling with the fact that, you're having trouble with discipline, or you're having trouble doing things that are physically uncomfortable, or that you're having trouble setting routines, we'll just say that it's okay to be fat.
But Alex, it's interesting to listen to you, because now you're saying what the shock for you in the military was the kind of alpha male thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I take what I just heard you talk about now, about putting expectations on people, or telling people you need to work hard to be happy and to be healthy, and blah, 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 and you should do that work. That is, I think, something that people would associate with alpha male, or toxic masculinity even, or misogynist, or something like that, or even prejudice or racism or whatever, because probably more of the fat people are a certain color or something. You know what I mean? So I don't know. You're a hybrid somehow, Alex, because on one hand you're telling me that you don't like masculinity or alpha male thing, but on the other hand, a lot of the things that come from you are, do you get what I mean?
I do. And first, I don't believe I said that I don't like alpha male things. I was just not that personality.
And you were 18 years old.
I was 18 years old. And
yeah.
Again, and it's not just, it's body language, it's fear of confrontation, it's being afraid, these kind of things. And I was all of those things, right? The fact that you would say that people in general would think that just very neutral, your life would be better if you made better choices, if that was associated with being an alpha male, we've gone way, way down. Because to me, I associate alpha male with the willingness to resort to violence, to maintain kind of the status quo, or to your place in a hierarchy, right? So when I think of alpha male things, I do typically think of physical aggression and the willingness, if not eagerness, for confrontation, and the maybe a little bit more, focused on actions instead of feelings or words. So I guess in that part, I do believe that actions and making changes in your life are important. But I would say that that's not. I would not call that alpha male behavior, for example.
But and in the military, what you said, it was kind of a traumatizing thing for you. What was the toughest part there? What's the? I mean, of course, as you said, you're young and you're coming from not having any responsibility and kind of being led through on the easy way from school, from your home. What was the toughest part there?
I just felt like a loser every day, because I was never good at physical activities. I was always a little bit slower. I could do less pull-ups, and it was just not my expertise. Also, I
wouldn't want to do a pull-up if I was your height.
Sure. And, when you look back as an adult who's kind of gotten pretty emotionally stable, you can say yeah, it just wasn't what I excelled at, and I was in an environment where that was really looked upon as your worth as a person was how physically fit you were and stuff like that. So it was just, I wouldn't even say that there was something particularly wrong with me in that environment. It was just not a good fit for my skill sets and my mental state. It was just kind of an environment where those characteristics were not seen as very highly. And so I internalized that very much, that I was a bad person or a worthless person or stuff like that. So, and when you're 20, you deal with that kind of stuff already, and just kind of had a big kind of crash course in a 5 years time of that. And so. Yeah.
But you took something good away from it as well.
Lots of good things from it. I'm very, very happy that I went through that. Yeah.
And what are the positives? I mean, what is it? What are the traits that you kind of built?
At least in my head, I've always kind of had that I've done the hardest thing that I'll ever do. And so that any difficult thing that comes my way, that's difficult, but it's not as hard as that. That's
so you set the bar.
A little bit, yeah, really early too. I'm much more confident than I was before. I felt that I made a brave decision. I chose something that was quite difficult, especially because of kind of my limitations or my kind of weaknesses that were very, very much exposed in that environment. So, and then just kind of my mantra that I can do hard things. And I got that from that experience, is that something can be hard, It can be scary. I might be bad at it, but there's no reason not to try it or do it. And that's something that I think about a lot. It's part of my, I don't know, a big part of the confidence I have in who I am, and the willingness to take risks and the willingness to do things even if I don't see other people doing them. I'm willing to
Talking on that.
Say again?
Talking about willingness to do things that you don't see other people do.
Yeah.
I've seen a video of you playing with fire outside topless.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, the topless part's optional.
Yeah.
No, I've been, it's called spinning poi. Basically, you put balls on strings and you spin them around.
But with fire. I mean, you put them on fire.
Yeah. I mean, basically, you practice with socks or with rubber balls or something, and the actual activity, or I mean, it can be with it's like Kevlar that's woven into like a ball, and you can soak it in some kind of gasoline or some kind of lamp oil or something, and then you can light it on fire. And if you've spun the socks enough times, then you don't catch yourself on fire in the process. So yeah, I've been doing that for 12, 13 years now.
What is this, some shamanic ritual, or you know what I mean? Like, where does this come from?
So after the Marine Corps, after 5 years of that, I did pretty much the exact opposite, which is I got really into like the Burning Man community.
What is that Burning Man? Because I've just seen photos. I mean, is it like, are people fucking there and doing drugs and?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, that's part of it.
That sounds great.
It was pretty fun. It's a fun thing to do when you're 23 and recently divorced. Yeah. No, it's and people people really into it. I mean, if there's lots of different groups in that kind of community, but part of them are pretty delusional. That no, it's about connection, and for most people, it's a party. It's a party,
and it's kind of like this Mad Max setting, you know, like it's in the desert.
But that's what's really cool about it, and you know, I dismissively say it's just a party, but there's some really really cool things about the community, but a lot of people are dishonest with the fact that the drugs and the sex is a really big attraction of it as well. But the part besides that, it's also a really big practice of being self-sufficient. So you go there and supposedly commerce is banned, right? You can't buy things. Everything you need, you have to bring with you, or someone can share with you. But again, that the whole concept falls flat when there's plenty of people selling drugs there. So, but anyway, and so basically, again, besides the military, this was also something that kind of helped me learn that I could be self-sufficient. And it was kind of a social group that I kind of fit in, because, you know, a lot of things I didn't fit in the military was because of not being super, what I called alpha male. This is not a problem in this community. Right. So, yeah, it was fun. It was a really interesting way to spend your mid-20s. And then...
And the fire dancing, or whatever what did you call it? What's it called?
It's called poi, P-O-I, poi spinning.
Poi, yeah, that's kind of comes out of that.
Yeah, it's fun. So I picked it up there, and maybe other people do it that aren't part of this community, but every person I've met that spins poi had some connection to Burning Man or something like that. But there's people who do it all over the world, so it must not just be the Burning Man. But I think... but
that's like the Mecca, the Holy Grail.
That's where I picked it up from. I guess that's all I can say. Yeah.
And so you have stages. You're kind of an abandoned, ignored kid. Then you go into the military. Then you go sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Yeah.
Well, you'd be disappointed. It's not really rock and roll. It's a lot of electronic music. But close enough. Yeah.
Electronic rock. Yeah. And then you get out of that and decide to be a copywriter.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, a couple things in between. So I got really into the sex and drugs, not so much the music part, but to a point where it got to be kind of a big problem. Because again, I got out of the military, and so then they pay for your university or college. And not only do they pay for the tuition, but they also give you pretty good monthly money to live on. And so I barely went to class, and so I basically just got 4 years of government-funded party time in my young and mid-20s. So very, very fun part of my life. But then that time ended, and it wasn't supposed. I didn't really plan for it to ever end, and so then I had to get a job, and then I was working weekends, and then like all of the fun stuff I was doing had to stop because I had to be sober during the day, and and then turns out that being an adult kind of sucks sometimes, and especially when you don't kind of plan ahead. And so I kind of ended up in a situation where I had a worthless degree in psychology, which in itself doesn't have to be a worthless degree, but most degrees in America now are worthless. And then
why is that?
Because it's a business. Because it's really
The
interesting.
school is a business just to kind of sell you the degree in a way.
Sure, and banks to sell you a loan. Yeah, because you. This is another. We can go on for a long time on this topic too, but you can't change. There's only, if you think of a distribution of like a class or hierarchy distribution, right? And say we see that the top 30% lives an enjoyable life. I want to be in that top 30%. And so if you say that the ticket to the top 30% is this college degree, and that anyone can do it, and we'll even give you a loan to do it, right? Well, it turns out that number of slots in the top 30% is very fixed. And if you sell a ticket to the top 30% to 60% of the population,
they will just move the 30% somewhere else.
It just doesn't work, right? And then when you have kind of a guaranteed loan that you can get from the government to go to school, then there's no disadvantage for the school to just double, triple, quadruple the cost of the education because these kids are idiots. They're going to take a loan. They're not going to ask too many questions about it. And it's very similar to healthcare, where if the primary way people pay through it is through insurance, they don't really look at the bill. They don't really understand the bill.
It's not your money, actually.
Right.
It's someone else's.
So you can charge kind of whatever you want, and it's the normal effects of economics to where if you raise the price too much, people aren't going to buy it.
Yeah.
You have a big, strong cultural push because we've told ourselves that this is the way to be a success in America. So you have that big, that's like the best sales technique in the world. And then that plus a government-backed loan, which you'd be interested in knowing that your student loans are like one of the only loans that you can't basically declare bankruptcy on. Credit cards, you can just be bankrupt and you don't have to pay the credit cards anymore. Not your student loans, right?
Yeah, and now they just wrote off a big portion of them, actually.
Not that big a portion. I think up to $10,000. I think it's up to $10,000 of student loans. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you end up in copywriting? What is that a calling for you somehow, or is that a way that you can, I don't know, make a living without having to do pull-ups?
Yeah, that's basically, yeah. No, it was. I didn't know it at the time, but I've always been pretty good with words. Again, I have having a lot of experience with emotional manipulation makes me really, really good at marketing. So I had some natural skill sets that support it. But, when I went to the Czech Republic, I came without a job, without a plan. I'm a pretty impulsive person. Calmed down a bit lately, but, and so at first I was just an English teacher because,
it's an easy way to come in here somehow, and there's always a demand.
Yeah, and I would say anyone who's struggling in America, have you thought about just leaving America? Because you're being a native English speaker is more valuable to you, obviously outside of America, than pretty much any 4-year degree that's not like STEM, right? So your most valuable skill set you already have, you're perfect at. And if you just go to a non-English speaking country, you can build a really, really nice career and life for yourself with skills that you already have and don't have to go to school for. So that was really nice. I came here, taught for a few years, and taught at a bad school, then taught at a good school, and then at the good school started teaching a lot of business people, and then eventually hopped from a school to working at a company, teaching people in the company. And once I was already at the company, then it was, can you help us with our website? Can you help us? Does this,
It's kind of random. One thing led to the other.
Yeah, proofreading a lot in English, and then specifically working on going from the Czech version of websites to English version. And then I started doing that for marketing agencies, not just a company. And then eventually started getting more into like LinkedIn and helping people sell things on LinkedIn, building sales campaigns on LinkedIn, stuff like that. But yeah, so it's just kind of, there was no plan. It was kind of do whatever the easiest thing was to get money at the time. And then once you have that, find something even easier, then even easier. And then at this point, it's basically working from basically home, a few hours a day, just writing in my native language. And apparently that's valuable to people. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be valuable unless you have something, as you were saying yourself, some characteristics within you that make you capable of writing something that gets through. Because, like right now, the availability of text and messages that we're getting everywhere is enormous, So you actually have to be pretty good to write an effective text.
You really don't.
Great.
No, it's really difficult for companies to know whether they have good marketing or not, because it's a skill set that, anyway, I'm a pretty good marketer. I'm pretty good at what I do, but you don't have to be good at what you do. In fact, I've worked with so many people and so many companies that you would think are like experts at what they do, and a lot of people in general are pretty incompetent. And but no, being a native English speaker, just writing in native English in a non-English speaking country, that puts you in the top 10% already.
Yeah,
right?
but yeah, obviously. But on the other hand, the content that you're putting out for your customers that are on a global market, it wouldn't work if you were not skilled. If there wasn't some X factor in whatever you do, I guess.
I hope so.
Because you're not just competing against the people here who are not capable of forming a sentence in English. You're competing globally, right? With your LinkedIn is not specific Czech LinkedIn. It's a global marketplace, right?
It definitely is. I mostly focus on Czech companies though. And I think a big part of, a lot of the companies want investors in the US. And so me being American has a really big advantage to that too.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years now, and you do learn. I hope I've learned some things over the last 5 or 6 years, and I wouldn't say that success means that you're definitely good at what you do.
No. Sometimes it's about being at the right place at the right time
and being good at sales. Yeah.
Yeah. And how is it going now? Because you're mainly in tech and IT, and all we see is Google is firing 5,000 people and blah blah blah. How is this industry right now? Do you see a decrease?
Tech's going to be okay.
Yeah.
We think of layoffs. We think of, grandpa got laid off at the steel mill and now we're all going to go hungry. This is a person making $500,000 a year who's going to get another job in 2 weeks, right? So they're going to be fine. And again, if you look at tech hiring over the last 2 years since COVID, I think most of these big companies doubled and then recently trimmed 5 or 10%. Right?
So then there is a net increase actually in employment there over the last 2, 3, 4 years.
A huge one. Yeah.
But we don't see whenever they hire 100 new people. We only see when they fire 100 people.
And again, these are very, very highly in demand skill sets for very, very well paid people. They're going to be fine. In fact, it's interesting because we have a big wave of tech people laid off right when kind of the AI revolution is starting. You're going to see a lot of these people go into startups. You're going to see a lot of these people build their own companies.
Yeah.
These are going to be the top 3 or 4% of most successful people in the world. So that they're going to be.
Yeah, and 10 years from now, we're going to hear stories about people who started out now after being laid off, went in to do something with AI. Is AI going to kill your field, writing?
I think I'm going to be fine. It's going to.
But it can help you. It can enhance you and.
Yeah, sure. So I already I know that so just to be clear, so we're talking about AI generative text. So I already kind of use them in my normal workflow. They're not quite good enough to where they'll get you started, right? And and maybe you'll get a sentence or two that you can copy and paste. But for the most part, they're not going to write what you need to write. I try every day. I say, can you write this post for me? Nah, I still can't. I look forward to when you can. But no, there's going to be kind of big advancements in these. It's going to move very quickly. So most of these tools are built on GPT-3, which is a large language model. Basically, it read the whole internet, and just like autocorrect on your phone or like text prediction on your phone, if you write these 3 words, it has a good idea what word number 4 should be, right? So it's not a thinking technology. It's not like an oracle.
It's just a logical,
sure.
Predictive.
Sure. But what's really interesting is that all of marketing, or a lot of marketing, is basically works the same way, where most people just find out what works, and then everyone tries to do it, right? And so but these tools, like I've seen more. I do a little bit of graphic design as well, like mostly just so I can do a lot of social media stuff and video content stuff all on my own, because being BPD, I have to kind of build a very kind of unique life and unique world around me, so where I can kind of anyway, that's I don't know. But so yeah, so I've seen really, really big progress in tools like Canva, which I used to use Adobe products, and they're much less user friendly, for example, much less beginner friendly, and Canva is amazing. Like,
I
really,
use it. It's great.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
So we see that. I also saw kind of the big wave of translator technology. So I've been here for 7 years, and I've seen how far it's come, going from Google Translate from Czech to English and English to Czech. I watched it go from completely unusable to 99% correct in the last 7 years. DeepL is another good tool for that. And so I actually think that the translation software is a really good precursor for this text and image generation, because even to this day, I still get paid to do translations. And like, it's not a secret. I use translation software for that. But it's not like
but why wouldn't you? I mean, it's like I would use a dictionary 50 years ago anyway, like that's a modern day dictionary.
But it's not enough to just run the text through. Like, the part that I get paid for is that if it's 95% correct, I know which 5% is wrong.
Yeah, and the system won't recognize that.
And I can fix that 5%, right? So it's gonna be very similar. It's gonna make it. I know my job is going to be a lot easier in the next 5 years when these tools come out. They're absolutely not going to replace me specifically, I guess. I don't know about everyone else, because A, I can still sell it, and B, because if you don't know marketing and you don't know copywriting, okay, you put it through the machine and it gives you what it says is good. How do you know it's good?
Yeah.
Because the machine says so. The machine's trying to sell subscriptions, right? So to be kind of in a position where you can say, evaluate the output, say, yes, that's good, yes, that's bad, or there's still always going to be room for people like that. And since I know it's coming.
But the rest, the 95% that won't survive in this world, they can watch Netflix.
Well, now they have lots of choices what they can watch.
Yeah. Alex, I think we're good for now. How's your weekend looking like? What are you going to do?
Yeah, so I've got a very pregnant wife, and so our weekends are, and I've got a 3-year-old or a 2.5-year-old.
And a dog.
And a dog, yeah. So we try to go on a little adventure every weekend. My wife learned to drive over the last year, and so we.
So is the adventure her driving or the destination?
Yeah, it's both, definitely. It's definitely both. We joke because in the Czech Republic, like the student driver sticker or whatever, it's like
Autoškola.
Well, it's a Z. It's like for začátník.
Really?
And so it's the same like Russian Z. So I told her I don't know what's more dangerous, her with the Z on the car or the Russians with the Z on their car. So, but no. So we'll typically find something like a little zoo or something where we can take like our daughter. We try to do something like that every Saturday, and then Sunday I don't know what we're gonna do. I don't know how the weather's gonna be. But
probably shitty like it is now. It's been very depressive lately. Alex, great to have you. Thanks for coming and spending time with me. We ended up talking about completely different things than I planned, but it was a good talk. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers.
Bye.